Commander Vex Torek of the Hegemony Defense Fleet watched the human transmission with what could only be described as profound amusement. His forearms gestured dismissively at the holographic display, while his mandibles clicked in the Krillian equivalent of laughter. "Did you hear that, Sub-Commander Quintal?" Vex Torek's voice carried the distinctive metallic rasp of his species. "The humans want to negotiate." Quintal, a sleek reptilian from the Sethrak Confederacy, hissed softly. Her scaled head tilted as she reviewed the data streaming across her console. 27 separate human colonies have fallen to our advance forces in the past rotation cycle. Their military response has been underwhelming, to say the least. The bridge of the Hegemony flagship Eternal Dominance buzzed with quiet efficiency. Officers from a dozen different species worked at their stations, monitoring the systematic conquest of human space. The war had been going splendidly for 3 standard months now. Too splendidly, some might say. Intelligence reports indicate their largest remaining stronghold is a backwater planet called, let me see. Vex Torek's secondary arms manipulated the data streams. Kepler 432b, population of roughly 8 million. Industrial capacity minimal. Military presence. He paused for dramatic effect. 1 battalion of their so-called colonial marines. 1 battalion? Quintal's throat sac inflated with mirth. Against our entire 3rd Assault Fleet? Commander, this hardly seems worthy of our attention. Perhaps we should delegate this to a minor squadron. Vex Torek considered this. The Hegemony had conquered 17 civilizations in the past century. None had proven as persistently irritating as these humans. Not dangerous, mind you, just irritating. Like a parasitic infection that refused to clear up completely. No, he decided finally. We finish this properly. The Hegemony Council grows tired of this protracted campaign. 1 decisive blow and we can catalog humanity alongside the Vorthan Empire and the Crystal Syndicate in our archives. Through the massive viewport, dozens of Hegemony warships hung in the void like predatory sea creatures. Each vessel bristled with weapons that could glass a planet's surface in minutes. The combined firepower of the 3rd Assault Fleet could have turned Earth's moon to cosmic dust. Against 1 human battalion. Sir, interrupted Communications Officer Jex-9, a cybernetically enhanced mechanoid. We are receiving another transmission from the planet's surface. Same human as before. Put it through, Vex Torek commanded. Let's hear what desperate plea they are making now. The hologram flickered to life, revealing a stocky human male in dirty combat fatigues. His face bore the weathered look of a career soldier, with graying hair at his temples and scars that spoke of previous conflicts. Most notably, he didn't look particularly afraid. This is Colonel Marcus Kane, commanding officer of the 402nd Marine Battalion, the human said calmly. I'm transmitting on all Hegemony frequencies. Vex Torek leaned forward in his command throne. How thoughtful. You have our attention, Colonel Kane. I want to make something clear to you and your fleet, Kane continued, apparently oblivious to the sarcasm. My orders are to hold this position. My men and women have families here. Civilians who have done nothing but try to build a life on this rock. How touching, Quintal whispered. Human sentimentality never fails to amuse. Kane's expression hardened. You have been systematically destroying human colonies, burning cities, killing civilians. You seem to think we are weak because we haven't been able to stop you so far. An accurate assessment, Vex Torek said aloud, knowing the transmission was two-way. Maybe we are weak, Kane admitted. Maybe our technology isn't as advanced as yours. Maybe our ships aren't as big. Our weapons aren't as powerful. Finally, some honesty, Jex-9 commented dryly. But here's the thing you alien bastards might not understand about humans. Kane's voice took on a harder edge. We don't know how to quit. We don't know when to give up. And when you threaten our families, our homes, our people, we stop being reasonable. Vex Torek's mandibles clicked again. Threatening us, Colonel? How delightfully naive. Not threatening. Warning. Kane looked directly into the camera. I have got 847 Marines under my command. You have got enough ships up there to blow this entire planet into asteroid fragments. But I will tell you what's going to happen. Please, enlighten us. Quintal said, her voice dripping with condescension. You are going to come down here thinking this will be easy. You are going to think 800 humans can't possibly stand against your mighty Hegemony fleet. You are going to land your troops, deploy your war machines, and expect us to roll over and surrender like every other species you have conquered." Kane paused, his weathered face resolute. "And then you are going to learn something about humans that apparently nobody bothered to put in your intelligence reports." The transmission cut off. Vextarax stared at the empty hologram display for several seconds. Then his laughter began, deep, rasping sounds that echoed through the bridge. Soon, other officers joined in. The idea that 800 humans could pose any meaningful resistance to the Third Assault Fleet was genuinely hilarious. "Sub-Commander Quintal," Vexturax said when his amusement subsided, "prepare invasion protocols. Full deployment. I want this over within 2 standard hours." "Sir," Quintal hesitated. "Full deployment seems excessive for such a small force. Perhaps a single battle group would suffice." "No." Vexturax's tone grew cold. "These humans have wasted enough of our time with their stubborn refusal to accept defeat gracefully. We end this decisively. Total deployment. Orbital bombardment, followed by ground assault. Show the galaxy what happens when primitives dare to threaten the hegemony." "As you command, sir." Within minutes, the massive fleet began moving toward Kepler 42b. Assault ships, troop transports, and support vessels formed up in attack formation. The planet grew larger in the viewport, a blue-green marble hanging in space like a target waiting to be struck. "Tactical analysis complete," reported the fleet's AI system through JEX-9. "Human defensive positions identified, military strength confirmed at 1 battalion level. Civilian population centers marked for preservation pending surrender." "And if they don't surrender?" Vextorek asked. "Then they become casualties of war," JEX-9 replied with mechanical indifference. The planet's surface revealed itself as they approached. Kepler 422b was actually quite beautiful, Vextorek admitted privately. Rolling green hills, crystal-clear lakes, and what appeared to be carefully planned cities that blended harmoniously with the natural landscape. It would make a pleasant vacation world once the human infestation was removed. "Sir, detecting human defensive preparations," the tactical officer announced. "They appear to be digging in around the capital city." On the main display, satellite imagery showed tiny figures setting up what looked like defensive positions. Trenches, bunkers, weapon emplacements. It looked exactly like something from a military history textbook, primitive, outdated and utterly inadequate against modern warfare. "They are actually going to fight," Quintal observed with something approaching respect. "Foolish. But brave, I suppose." "Bravery is just stupidity wearing better clothing," Vextorek replied. "Begin orbital bombardment. Target their military installations first." The hegemony fleet opened fire. Beams of coherent energy lanced down from orbit, striking the human defensive positions with surgical precision. Explosions bloomed across the planet's surface like deadly flowers. Through the enhanced viewing systems, they could see tiny figures running for cover as their fortifications were systematically destroyed. "Direct hits confirmed," Tactical reported. "Human defensive capability reduced by approximately 60%. "Excellent. Launch the first wave." Hundreds of assault pods streaked toward the planet's surface like meteors. Each pod contained a squad of hegemony shock troops, the finest warriors from across known space. Quaterians with their 4 arms and natural armor plating, Satusrake with their speed and venomous claws, mechanoids with their enhanced targeting systems and integrated weaponry. Against 800 humans with primitive kinetic weapons, this was going to be embarrassingly easy. The first wave of pods landed in a coordinated pattern around the human capital city. Immediately, tactical data began streaming back to the fleet. The humans had indeed taken shelter in underground bunkers and tunnel systems. Smart, but ultimately futile. "First wave reporting minimal resistance," Quintal announced. "Human forces appear to have withdrawn to secondary positions. As expected, they are hoping to draw our forces into urban combat where their inferior numbers might be less of a disadvantage." Vextorak studied the tactical display, a classic defensive strategy, also classically ineffective against overwhelming technological superiority. "Second wave away," Tactical reported. More assault pods launched from the fleet. Soon, nearly 10,000 hegemony troops would be on the planet's surface. Even if every human was a perfect soldier, which intelligence suggested they definitely were not, the mathematics were impossibly against them. Sir, Jex-9 interrupted, receiving scattered reports from ground forces. Some unusual occurrences. Define unusual. 3rd Squad of the 47th Assault Regiment reports their advanced scouts simply disappeared. Last communication was normal patrol check-in. Then nothing. Vextorak frowned. Equipment malfunction? Unknown. Similar reports from Squads 12, 21, and 35. Small units going silent during advance reconnaissance. Humans attempting to pick off isolated units, Quintal suggested. Standard guerrilla tactics. Annoying but manageable. Indeed. Order all units to maintain squad integrity. No solo operations. These humans want to play hide-and-seek in their tunnels. We will smoke them out. But as the hours passed, the reports grew more concerning. Not dangerous necessarily, but puzzling. Hegemony units would advance to positions that scanners showed as empty, only to come under sudden, intense fire from seemingly impossible angles. Human soldiers would appear, engage briefly with devastating accuracy, then vanish again before reinforcements could respond. How are they moving so quickly? Vextork demanded. Our thermal scanners should be tracking every heat signature on that planet. Unknown, Sir, Jex-9 replied with mechanical precision. Human forces appear to be utilizing underground tunnel networks more extensively than initial reconnaissance indicated. Then collapse the tunnels. Use seismic charges. Attempting compliance, sir. However, human tunnel systems appear to be deeper and more complex than anticipated. Seismic charges are having minimal effect on primary defensive networks. Vetstorak felt the first stirring of actual annoyance. Not concern, certainly not fear, but genuine irritation. This was supposed to be a simple mop-up operation. Instead, these primitive humans were making it into an actual military engagement. Status report on casualties, he commanded. Hegemony forces have sustained 17 confirmed killed in action, 43 wounded, and human casualties. Unknown, sir. We have been unable to confirm significant human losses. The bridge fell silent. 60 confirmed hegemony casualties against unknown human losses was not the ratio anyone had expected when this operation began. They are better than our intelligence suggested, Quintal said quietly. They are still just humans, Vexturik replied firmly. Deploy the hunter-killer units. If these primitives want to play in their tunnels, we will send them opponents who can fight in the dark. The hunter-killer units were the hegemony's answer to guerrilla warfare. Enhanced warriors with advanced sensory equipment and specialized training for close-quarters combat. They could track a target across a planet's surface and fight effectively in any environment. 24 hours later, half the hunter-killer units had also gone silent. This is impossible, Vextorik snarled, his mandibles clicking rapidly. They are humans. Primitives. How are they? Sir, Jex-9 interrupted, receiving transmission from ground forces. Colonel Venix Krull of the 23rd Hunter Regiment requests immediate orbital support. His position is under heavy attack. From how many humans? Unknown, sir. Colonel Venix Krull reports. Let me quote directly. These aren't normal soldiers. They fight like demons possessed. Request immediate evac for wounded. Vextorak stood from his command throne. This had gone on long enough. Prepare for concentrated orbital bombardment. Target the entire capital city. Sir, Quintal said carefully, that will likely result in significant civilian casualties. Then perhaps next time they will surrender when given the opportunity, Vexturek replied coldly. I want this resistance broken, completely and permanently. But before the bombardment could begin, another transmission came through. This time it wasn't from the surface. Fleet Command. This is Captain Zix Mortis of the destroyer Swift Vengeance. We have a problem. What kind of problem, Captain? Human ships, sir. They just appeared. 6 vessels, unknown class. They are moving to intercept our position. Vextorak stared at the tactical display. 6 small ships had indeed appeared at the edge of the system, accelerating toward the hegemony fleet. According to intelligence, humanity had no space-capable warships in this sector. Size and armament? He demanded. Smaller than our destroyers. Sir, but their acceleration curve is concerning. They are moving faster than they should be able to move. They are running, Quintal said. 6 ships against our entire fleet. They have to be attempting an evacuation. No, Vextorak said slowly, studying the sensor data. They are not running. They are attacking. And that's when things got interesting. The 6 human ships spread into a formation that defied conventional military doctrine. Instead of maintaining a defensive posture or attempting to flee, they accelerated directly toward the hegemony fleet's center. It was either the most suicidal attack in military history or the most audacious. All ships, battle stations, Vex Turek commanded, prepare to engage. The human ships opened fire while still at maximum range, far beyond what should have been effective engagement distance. Their weapons appeared to be some kind of kinetic projectile system, primitive but traveling at speeds that made Vex Turak's sensor officers double-check their readings. "Impossible," breathed the tactical officer. "Those projectiles are moving at 12% of light speed. How are they achieving such velocities with kinetic weapons?" The first salvo struck 3 hegemony ships simultaneously. The impacts were devastating not because the weapons were particularly advanced, but because they hit with the force of small asteroids. "Damage reports," Vex Turek barked. "Destroyer Iron Talon reporting major hull breach. Cruiser Endless Night has lost primary weapons. Frigate Silent Death is—" "Sir, the frigate is gone." "Gone. A hegemony warship, destroyed by primitive human weapons. Return fire, all ships. Concentrated barrage." The hegemony fleet responded with overwhelming force. Energy beams, plasma charges, and antimatter warheads streaked toward the human ships. It should have been instant annihilation, but the human ships moved like nothing Vex Turek had ever seen. They twisted and dove through space with an agility that defied physics, dodging attacks that should have been impossible to avoid. 2 took hits and kept fighting. 1 was destroyed completely, but not before launching another devastating salvo. "How are they doing this?" Quintal demanded. "Their maneuverability exceeds anything in our databases. And their targeting accuracy," added the tactical officer. "They are hitting us at ranges and angles that should be impossible for their technology level." The space battle raged for 20 minutes. When it ended, 5 of the 6 human ships had been destroyed. But they'd taken 11 hegemony vessels with them, including 2 heavy cruisers and a dreadnought. The bridge of the Eternal Dominance was silent. "Status report from the surface," Vex Turek said finally. "Ground forces continue to report heavy resistance. Human defensive positions appear to be multiplying, sir." "Multiplying?" "Every time we clear a section, new defensive positions appear in areas we have already secured. It's as if the humans are creating new fortifications faster than we can destroy existing ones." Vex Turek sat heavily in his command throne. This was not going according to plan. Not at all. "Sir," Jex 9 announced, receiving priority transmission from Hegemony Command, "Admiral Kexthuran wishes to speak with you directly." Admiral Kexthuran was Vex Turak's superior, and not known for his patience with subordinates who failed to meet expectations. "Put him through." The hologram that materialized showed a massive Krillian, whose forearms bore the ceremonial scars of high rank. His mandibles were set in a distinctly displeased configuration. "Commander Vex Turek," the Admiral's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "I have been reviewing the reports from your operation. Explain to me how a single human battalion has managed to destroy nearly a quarter of your fleet." "Sir, the humans appear to be more resourceful than intelligence indicated. However, the situation remains under control." "Under control?" Admiral Kexthuran's voice rose. "You have lost 47 ships to primitives with kinetic weapons. The Hegemony Council is demanding explanations that I do not have. Sir, with respect, the human resistance has been more organized than anticipated." "What? More organized?" The Admiral's image leaned forward. "Commander, I'm reading reports of human soldiers who disappear and reappear at will. Ships that move like they are ignoring basic physics. Weapons that somehow achieve impossible velocities. Either your intelligence gathering was criminally incompetent, or these humans are not what they appear to be." Medium Storak felt his career prospects dimming. "Sir, I believe with additional resources." "No." The Admiral's tone brooked no argument. "You have failed, Commander. I'm sending the 5th Fleet to complete your mission. You are relieved of command, effective immediately." The transmission ended. Quintal looked at her former commander with something that might have been sympathy. "Sir, perhaps we underestimated them." Vex Turek stared at the planet spinning slowly in the viewport. Down there, somewhere in tunnels and bunkers, 800 human soldiers were still fighting, still holding their ground against impossible odds. "Yes," he said quietly, "I believe we did." As the remaining ships of the Third Assault Fleet began their withdrawal, one final transmission came from the planet's surface. It was Colonel Kane again, his face now showing the wear of 3 days of continuous combat. "This is Colonel Marcus Kane to any hegemony forces still in system," Kane said. His voice was hoarse, but steady. "I want you to remember something. We are just one battalion, one small unit on one little planet." Kane paused, looking directly into the camera. "If this is what one battalion of colonial marines can do to your precious hegemony fleet, just imagine what happens when the rest of humanity finds out what you have been doing to our colonies." The transmission ended. As Vextarak watched the planet recede in the viewport, he found himself thinking about the colonel's words. What would happen when the rest of humanity found out? He had a feeling the hegemony was about to learn the answer to that question, and he was fairly certain they weren't going to like it. Admiral Kex Theron stood before the tactical hologram, his 4 arms crossed in what any Krillian would recognize as deep contemplation. The Fifth Fleet hung in space around him like a constellation of death, 230 vessels of the finest military technology the hegemony had ever produced. "Remind me again why we need an entire fleet to deal with one human battalion," he said to his intelligence officer, a thin-limbed Vorthine named Sil Nexus. "Sir, after reviewing the combat logs from Commander Vex Torax, setback, we believe the humans may have received reinforcements," Silenexus replied, his crystalline voice tinkling like broken glass. "Either that, or our initial intelligence was catastrophically incorrect." "Catastrophically incorrect," Admiral Kex Theron repeated slowly. "That's one way to put it. Another way would be completely fictional. Tell me, Silnexus, how does a species we classified as technologically primitive manage to destroy 47 hegemony warships?" "Unknown, sir. However, we have implemented new scanning protocols and brought additional specialists for this operation." The Admiral gestured toward the planet with one of his lower arms. Kepler 422b looked peaceful from this distance, spinning slowly against the starfield. It was hard to believe that something down there had humiliated the mighty Third Assault Fleet. "Status of human forces?" he asked. "Unchanged, sir. Still reading approximately 800 individual life signs concentrated around the capital city. No additional ships detected. No orbital platforms. No defensive satellites. And yet they managed to—" "Sir," the communications officer, a cybernetically enhanced mechanoid designated Zit Prime, interrupted with unusual urgency. "Priority transmission incoming. It's— Sir, it's from Earth." Admiral Kex Theron felt a chill run down his primary spine. Earth, the human homeworld. The planet they'd been carefully avoiding while systematically conquering the outer colonies. Put it through. The hologram flickered to life, revealing a human female in what appeared to be formal military dress. She was older, perhaps 50 standard years, with gray-streaked hair and eyes that held the cold calculation of a career strategist. "I am Admiral Sarah Lancaster, Supreme Commander of United Earth Defense Forces," the human said without preamble. "I'm addressing this message to whoever's in charge of the fleet currently threatening Kepler 442b. Admiral Kex Theron straightened. "I am Admiral Kex Theron of the Hegemony Fifth Fleet. You will surrender your forces immediately or face the consequences." Admiral Lancaster smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Admiral, let me explain something to you about human military doctrine. When you attack our colonies, when you kill our civilians, when you threaten our people, you are not just fighting the local garrison. You are fighting all of us. Your threats do not concern us, human. We have conquered 17 civilizations. Your species will be the 18th. "Really?" Lancaster's smile widened. "Tell me, Admiral, how many of those 17 civilizations had colonies scattered across 400 different star systems? What does that have to do with how many of them had been fighting wars against each other for 3,000 years straight?" Admiral Kex Theron felt the first stirring of unease. "Your point, human." "My point, Admiral, is that you picked a fight with a species that considers warfare to be our primary cultural export. And now you have given us a really good reason to stop fighting each other and start fighting you." The transmission paused as Admiral Lancaster consulted something off-screen. Let me give you some updated intelligence, since yours seems to be lacking. While you have been playing with Colonel Kane and his Marines, we have been mobilizing. The human defense fleet now consists of 8,423 vessels of various classes. Admiral Kex Theron's mandibles clicked involuntarily. Impossible. Your intelligence indicates that we have 12 space-capable warships total. Lancaster interrupted. That was last month's disinformation. This month, every mining ship, cargo hauler, and civilian transport in human space has been converted to military specifications. We have been building warships in asteroid belts, on hidden bases, inside hollowed-out comets. Silenexus leaned toward the Admiral's ear. Sir, long-range sensors are detecting multiple hyperspace signatures, large formations, moving toward this system. Furthermore, Lancaster continued, you might want to check your rear sensors. Battle Group Alpha should be arriving right about now. The tactical display exploded with new contacts. Dozens of human ships had just dropped out of hyperspace behind the Hegemony fleet. Not the small, primitive vessels they'd fought before, but massive dreadnoughts bristling with weapons. Sir, Zex Prime announced with mechanical calm, detecting 73 human vessels in attack formation, configuration unknown. Weapons systems. Sir, their weapons systems are significantly more advanced than our previous encounters. How is this possible? Admiral Kex Theron demanded. Our scouts reported no significant military presence in this sector. Because you weren't looking for the right things. Lancaster replied, you were looking for traditional military installations. Space stations, orbital platforms, fleets in formation. Her expression grew predatory. What you weren't looking for were mining operations that are actually shipyards, cargo convoys that are actually fleet movements, scientific expeditions that are actually reconnaissance missions. We have been preparing for this war since the day you destroyed your first human colony. Battle stations. Admiral Kex Theron barked. All ships prepare for combat. Oh, Admiral, Lancaster said softly, you still don't understand. This isn't a battle. This is an intervention. The human fleet opened fire. But these weren't the primitive kinetic weapons they'd encountered before. These were coherent energy beams that sliced through Hegemony shields like they weren't there. Plasma torpedoes that detonated with the force of small stars and something else projectiles that seemed to bend space around themselves, making impossible course corrections mid-flight. Damage reports. The Admiral shouted over the chaos. Heavy cruiser Dominion's Pride is gone, sir. Destroyer Squadron 7 has taken massive casualties. Sir, their weapons are adaptive. They are adjusting to our defensive frequencies in real time. Admiral Kex Theron watched in growing horror as his magnificent fleet was systematically dismantled. The humans fought with a coordination and tactical sophistication that shouldn't have been possible for a species they'd classified as barely spacefaring. How are they doing this, he demanded. Sir, Silenexus replied, his voice shaking, I believe we have made a fundamental error in our assessment of human capabilities. What kind of error? We assumed they were primitive because their technology appeared inferior to ours. But they are not primitive, sir. They are deceptive. On the tactical display, human ships moved with impossible coordination. Not just squadron-level coordination, every ship in their fleet was moving as if controlled by a single mind. Sir, Zex Prime called out, detecting massive energy buildup from the planet's surface. Some kind of, sir, it appears to be a planetary defense cannon. Impossible. Our scans showed no such installations. They are emerging from underground, sir. Multiple emplacements. Sir, the energy readings they are off the scale. The first shot from the planetary defense grid lit up space like a miniature sun. The beams struck the Hegemony flagship Eternal Supremacy dead center, and the massive dreadnought simply ceased to exist. Full retreat, Admiral Kex Theron ordered. All ships, emergency hyperspace jump. Sir, the humans are jamming our hyperspace generators. Then we fight our way out. But fighting their way out proved easier said than done. The human fleet moved like a pack of predators, cutting off escape routes and herding Hegemony ships into kill zones. Their weapons seemed to anticipate defensive maneuvers, striking exactly where ships would be rather than where they were. And from the planet below, Colonel Kane's voice came over the communication channels. Admiral Kex Theron, Kane said, his voice carrying the satisfaction of a job well done. "I believe I mentioned that you were going to learn something about humans." "What are you?" the admiral gasped as another of his ships exploded. "We are the species that survived ice ages, plague, global wars, and each other," Kane replied. "We are the species that looked at a universe full of hostile environments and decided to live there anyway. We are the species that turned warfare into an art form." Another planetary defense beam lanced out, vaporizing a hegemony heavy cruiser. "But most importantly," Kane continued, "we are the species that doesn't know how to quit. You could have left us alone, you could have found some other species to conquer. Instead, you decided to threaten our families." "We didn't know," Admiral Kex Thuron began. "You didn't know because you didn't want to know," Kane interrupted. "You saw what looked like primitive colonies and assumed we were easy prey. You never bothered to ask why a primitive species had colonies scattered across half the galaxy." The admiral watched helplessly as his fleet was methodically destroyed. Of 230 ships, fewer than 50 remained functional. "You never asked why our primitive colonies all had underground tunnel systems that could house entire populations. You never asked why our weak military was organized into small, independent units that could operate without central command. Another squadron of hegemony ships disappeared in nuclear fire. And you definitely never asked why a species as harmless as humans managed to survive in a universe full of things that wanted to kill us." Finally, mercifully, the human jamming ceased. The remaining hegemony ships jumped to hyperspace, fleeing the system in complete disarray. Admiral Kex Thuron found himself aboard one of only 37 surviving vessels. His magnificent Fifth Fleet, the pride of the hegemony navy, had been reduced to scattered survivors in less than 4 hours. "Status report," he said wearily. "Total casualties, 193 ships destroyed or missing." Sal Nexus reported. "Approximately 40,000 personnel killed or missing in action. Human casualties, unknown, but estimated to be minimal." "Sir," Zex Prime added, receiving multiple priority transmissions from across hegemony space. "Human fleets have simultaneously attacked 17 separate military installations, all attacks coordinated to the second, all devastatingly effective." Admiral Kex Thuron slumped in his command chair. "They were waiting for us, sir. The humans, they weren't just defending that one colony. They were using it as bait. They wanted us to commit a major fleet so they could study our tactics, our capabilities, our weaknesses." The full scope of the trap became clear as more reports came in. While the hegemony had been focused on conquering human colonies, the humans had been quietly surrounding hegemony space. Every major military base, every supply depot, every fleet anchorage had been targeted simultaneously. "Sir," Silnexus said quietly, receiving transmission from Hegemony Command.
It's a general retreat order."
"All forces are to withdraw to core systems immediately." "A retreat order." "Sir, the humans have launched simultaneous attacks on 43 separate targets. We are reading total fleet losses in excess of 800 vessels. The Hegemony Council is requesting emergency peace negotiations." Admiral Kex Thuron stared at the stars streaming past in hyperspace. In less than one standard day, the mighty hegemony conqueror of 17 civilizations had been reduced to suing for peace. "Sir," communications reported, "incoming message from Admiral Lancaster." "Put it through." Admiral Lancaster appeared in the hologram again, but now she was aboard what was clearly a warship's bridge. Behind her, officers worked efficiently at stations displaying tactical information from across known space. "Admiral Kex Thuron," she said pleasantly. "I trust your fleet enjoyed their visit to Kepler 4th. What do you want, human?" "Nothing complicated. Complete withdrawal from all human territories, reparations for damages, and a formal apology to every family you have harmed." "And if we refuse?" Lancaster's smile returned. "Then you will discover what happens when 8,000 human warships decide to visit the hegemony homeworlds. I believe your intelligence files classify our species as technologically primitive. You might want to update those files." The transmission ended. Admiral Kex Thuron sat in silence for long minutes, processing the magnitude of their defeat. Finally, he activated his personal communications system and composed a message to Hegemony Command. "This is Admiral Kex Thuron of the Fifth Fleet," he began. "I am submitting my formal report on Operation Human Pacification. Summary: total failure. Recommendation: immediate peace negotiations and complete withdrawal from human space. He paused, considering his next words carefully. Additional recommendation: update all intelligence files regarding human military capabilities. Previous assessments were not merely incorrect, they were catastrophically wrong. Humans are not a primitive species. They are possibly the most dangerous military force we have ever encountered. He paused again. Final note: any future operations against human forces should be considered only if we are prepared for a war of total annihilation. Because that's exactly what we will get. As the remnants of his fleet continued their retreat toward hegemony space, Admiral Kex Theron reflected on Colonel Kane's final words. The humans had indeed taught them something that no other species in their long history of conquest had managed to teach them. They had taught them fear. Meanwhile, back on Kepler 4002b, Colonel Marcus Kane stood in the ruins of what had been a beautiful colonial city. His Marines were emerging from their underground positions, dirty, exhausted, but victorious. "Colonel," his communications officer reported, "Admiral Lancaster sends her compliments. The operation was a complete success. All hegemony forces are in full retreat." Kane nodded, surveying the damage to his adopted home. The city could be rebuilt, the dead could be mourned and honored, but the message had been sent, loud and clear, to anyone else who might consider humanity easy prey. "Sir," his second-in-command approached. "What are your orders?" Kane looked up at the stars, where the distant lights of the human fleet were still visible. "Get our people medical attention, start damage assessment, begin rebuilding operations." He paused. "And send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the 422nd Colonial Marines held the line." "Sir, should we mention that we were never really in any serious danger? That the whole battle was just a delaying action while the main fleet got into position?" Kane's weathered face cracked into a slight smile. "Lieutenant, never tell an enemy that their intelligence was wrong when being wrong is working in your favor. Sir, let them think 800 Marines took on their entire fleet and won. Let them think every human colony is defended by soldiers that dangerous. Let them think twice before they ever threaten human civilians again." Kane looked around at his surviving Marines, men and women who had volunteered to be bait in humanity's trap, who had faced impossible odds without flinching, who had held their ground while the real battle was fought in space. "Besides," he added, "it's not entirely untrue. We did hold the line. We did face down their entire fleet. We just had a little backup." As reports continued to come in from across human space, the full scope of the operation became clear. Operation Human Shield had been 3 years in the planning. Every human colony, every military installation, every civilian transport had been part of an elaborate deception designed to make the hegemony believe they were fighting a scattered, primitive species. Instead, they had found themselves facing a coordinated military force that spanned hundreds of star systems, commanded by leaders who had been studying hegemony tactics for decades, and supported by a technology base that had been deliberately concealed behind facades of primitive equipment. The hegemony had attacked what they thought was humanity's weakness. Instead, they had triggered humanity's greatest strength, the ability to unite against a common threat. Colonel Kane walked among his troops, checking on the wounded, congratulating the survivors, mourning the fallen. They had paid a price for this victory: 37 Marines killed in action, over 100 wounded. But their sacrifice had meaning. Never again would the hegemony consider humans easy prey. Never again would any species look at human colonies and see weakness. They would see 800 Marines who held the line against impossible odds. They would see a species that didn't know how to quit. And if they were smart, they would look elsewhere for their conquests. "Colonel," his communications officer called out, "incoming transmission from Earth. It's the President." Kane straightened his uniform as best he could and accepted the call. "Mr. President." "Colonel Kane," the familiar voice said warmly, "I wanted to personally thank you and your Marines. Your actions today ended a war before it could truly begin. Just doing our job, sir." "No, Colonel. You did much more than that. You reminded the galaxy that humanity is not to be trifled with. The hegemony has already transmitted formal surrender terms, complete withdrawal, reparations, the works." Kane felt a surge of satisfaction. "Glad to hear it, sir. There's going to be a medal ceremony when you get back to Earth. The whole 9 yards. Heroes welcome." With respect, sir, we'd prefer to stay here and help rebuild. There was a pause. Colonel, you and your people have earned some rest. Mr. President, this is our home now. These people depend on us. We'd like to finish what we started. Another pause, then a chuckle. Of course you would. Very well, Colonel. Keep your Marines on station. We will send the rebuilding supplies to you. Thank you, sir. As the communication ended, Kane looked around at the damaged city that his Marines had died to protect. Human civilians were already emerging from the shelters, ready to begin the long process of rebuilding their lives. It would take years to repair all the damage, but they would repair it because that's what humans did. They survived, they adapted, they rebuilt, and they remembered. The hegemony had learned their lesson the hard way. They had discovered that attacking humanity's soldiers meant facing not just those soldiers, but the entire human race united in righteous fury. Colonel Marcus Kane and the 442nd Colonial Marines had held the line, but behind that line stood 8 billion humans and 8,000 warships, all ready to remind the galaxy that some species should never be underestimated. The war was over before it had truly begun, but the legend of the Marines who faced down an entire alien fleet was just beginning. And across known space, other species would hear that legend and remember it. Humanity was no longer the galaxy's newest civilizations. They were its most dangerous one.